Oh, yeah.
Call this meeting to order. It is 10:02 a.m. The clock is just a tiny bit fast. Please note this meeting is being recorded. Thank you to members of the public here with us today and joining us through the audio option. And I ask everyone's patience as we move through today's meeting. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Just give you all a heads up. At our last meeting, we had a little technical difficulty with our microphones, so don't use your microphones. Instead, these pucks in front of you, we're back to our pucks. That's why there's wires all over the place. They're picking up sound, and everyone can hear us on the public line through those pucks. So just so you're mindful. These little round things here, the ones at the Yamaha, these are the ones that are going to be picking up the sound. So don't speak into the mics. They're not working out well. We'll figure it out, and next month, we'll be right back at it. Thank you for making it here and finding us in our little remote nook of Golden Gate Bridge. I'll start with Director Conroy. Present. Dorsey.
Present.
Engardio.
Present.
Garbarino. Present. Giudice.
Here.
Rosebowl.
Present.
Hernandez. Here. Maston.
Here.
Moulton Peters is absent. Barr is absent. Rabbit.
Here.
Redoni.
Here.
Safai is absent. Snyder.
Here.
Stephanie.
Present.
Here. Here. Second Vice President Hill.
Here.
First Vice President Cochran.
Here.
And President Terry.
Here.
Thank you. You have 16, so you definitely have a point.
Are you going to call staff?
Sure. Dennis Mulligan, you here?
Present.
Joe Wire?
Yes.
All right. And in Eva Bauer for Vicious Place, we have John Eberly today. Kim Manolius.
Good morning.
Thank you. Dave Rivera.
Morning, President.
Mike Hoffman.
Here.
And Kelly Hopper. Here. All right. Thank you, that's staff.
I do want to take a moment and say that the director's parking lot is full, I'm told. But if you're parked in the public parking lot or your staff is parked in the public parking lot, if you're a director, that's fine. I'm assured you won't get ticketed. If you are, talk to this guy. Director Snyder, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Snyder. The next item on the agenda is public comment. I have a pile of cards in front of me here, and I know we have some folks on the line. I will start with those who are here directly. David Herrera, if we can go for 3 minutes. Mr. Herrera.
I think you guys can hear me. Can you hear me? All right. Good morning, President Terrio, Board of Directors, General Manager, Mr. Mulligan. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is David Herrera, and I am before you today as a proud 22-year bus operator for the Golden Gate Transit District. My story begins in 1980, when my father, married with 3 children, looking to better our lives, took a leap of faith and applied as a bus operator here at the district. He applied for this position knowing no one here, knowing nothing about the job, and absolutely no experience in it. His desire to work here was cemented in faith and the belief that if he worked hard, did the things asked of him, the financial rewards and opportunities after a long career would exist. Unlike my siblings who chose the path of higher education, I chose a slightly harder path, and with many, many years of quote unquote encouragement from my parents and looking to better my young family's lives, I also took this leap of faith and chose to apply as a bus operator here at the district. So in 2001, I accepted an offer to become a bus operator. I have never second guessed or regretted my decision in any way to start a career here at the district. But as in life, there have been many storms that needed to be weathered. Now today, the bus operators have a dark cloud over us that has tested our faith and has made our journey to retirement not as smooth as we'd like. Today, the bus operators pension plan actuaries should be presenting an update on the plan's health that is nothing less than doom and gloom. We have seen our operator numbers plummet. Our retirees now outnumber our active operators 3-1. Our operators have endured many obstacles during the life of this plan. We have deferred wages, made concessions in contract after contract, made drastic changes to our medical benefits, all in the name to salvage and secure our future. The future of the bus division has never been darker. Recruitment is moving at a snail's pace. Operators, while enjoying the opportunity to earn more with unprecedented overtime levels, are burning themselves out with compressed running schedules and a lack of staffing to even have time off to simply go to the doctor's appointment. There are no more plays here. There is no more time to wait and see. The time for the district to act on what has long been a debate is now. The heavy lifting to salvage and regain the confidence in your operators that their future is secure and to restore the assurance in future operators that their decision to start a career here at the district as a professional bus operator, as one that my father and I made many years ago, must be done. You and you only have this ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Herrera. The next speaker on my little stack of cards is Mr. Weinstein, Shane Weinstein.
Good morning, directors, and thank you for all that are here for giving me time to annoy you over the past few days. I appreciate that. When I started this, I was able to see. It's been a long fight. Good morning, Chair Terrio and directors of Golden Gate Bridge. My name is Shane Weinstein, president of ATU Local 1575, and I represent every active and retired bus operator here at the Bridge District. It's an extremely important day. It's quite possibly the most important day to every bus driver at Golden Gate Transit, both past and present. Today, for the first time, the actuary of our bus driver pension will come in and report to you to convey the dire state that this pension plan is in currently and has been for many, many years. It was your vote to make this happen, and we're grateful now that there's a spotlight on quite possibly one of the most expensive problems to both the district financially and ethically. For the last 9 years of representing this union, I've had singular conversations with past and present board members about this very subject. For many years, I've been coming to this body and others to raise a huge red flag, again, because of the dire funding status that this plan has had for 2 decades now. In 2003, this plan went inverted. The money coming in was no longer enough to pay what was going out. So I ask you, directors, how would you feel if you knew that your pension plan, your family's future, was purposely being underfunded year after year after year? How would you feel if the direction of the actuary that was being given was not being followed whatsoever? This plan has been tanking for too many years, and we need your help. At the most recent pension meeting, which took place on August 9th, the first words of the actuary's mouth were, and I quote, "This is a DEFCON 1 moment." He went on to further say, and I quote, "This is the worst funded plan that I am aware of in California." Needless to say, that got the attention of everybody in the room immediately, because that's exactly what type of emergency we have on our hands here. For far too many years, the district has taken the position that they are somehow not responsible for the unfunded liability of this plan. The district is a single employer public plan in the state of California. It is the district's fiscal responsibility to keep this plan healthy. The ages-old argument that the district has held that they are somehow not responsible is absolutely ludicrous. For too many years, the district has neglected to properly fund the plan to the plan's actuary's recommendations. And now the problem is no longer a little stone, but a boulder we must move up a mountain. There are 2 reasons, and 2 reasons only, that created this problem. The plan wasn't funded properly to the actuary's recommendations year over year over year, and the number of operators contributing to the plan has been slashed in half. 270 in August of 2020, 157 today. It's important to mention that very recently at the pension trust own attorney publicly stated, and I quote, "The district is the ultimate guarantor of this plan." Full stop. We must no longer sit back and hope it gets better. It's not going to get better. We no longer have 300 operators. We have half of that number. We have 160 people contributing to a plan that 450 people are pulling from, and that simply doesn't work from an economic standpoint. Directors, the union trustees look forward to implementing recent negotiated changes as soon as it is brought to the trust body. What our union will not accept in this rehab plan is to cut our benefits because of 20 plus years of underfunding and mismanagement on the district's part. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Weinstein. Next speaker is Mr. John Holden. Mr. Holden.
Good morning, President Terrio. My name is John Holden. I'm a bus operator for the district. I'm a native San Franciscan. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge Ms. Senator Feinstein's passing. She was a great San Franciscan and a real asset to the bridge. We can all agree that the pension plan is underfunded. What we can agree on is the solution to the unfunded liability. There's the Pepper people and there's the Classic members. There's a lot of detail there that needs to be worked out. I sent a letter where there was a death threat letter a couple of years ago. I sent it to you just now, last night, and this had to do with the narrative was well, it's an internal union struggle over dues or something like that. The narrative was not that. The narrative was that we wanted a say in our union because we were paying the bills with the PEPRA contributions going up. And we found out that the retirees were voting in our election, which causes the top and we don't get a voice. We also found that they're not paying the dues; they're paying a per capita tax to the international, and not dues to the local union, which is ineligible to vote. Now, this was massaged a little bit at the DOL, but I didn't want to make the choice to go to the work first non-union busting firm to sue, because I'm a proud union member and a proud San Franciscan. But the unfairness of this, the violence in the workplace, it just struck me when Mayor Feinstein took over after that tragic day in San Francisco, that there's no place for threats and violence in the workplace. Half of us never came back. There was 10 people on the list. Half of us did come back. It's very stressful and very difficult to deal with, not knowing who was behind the threats and what's going on there. So I just want to kind of say we could all work together. There's plenty of blame to go around with the pension holiday and other people just gaming the system. But if we could come together and find a common solution, it would be great. Because, for me, the working group that's going to solve this problem is not really representing the whole workforce, where you have the PEPRA people coming in and you have the people, the unfunded liability, they're already out the door collecting their pensions. So it's a very inequitable situation, but I hope you can solve it. If you've got 50 million laying around in the prudent reserve, go ahead, put it in. I'd be happy about that. But if you don't have 50 million laying around in your prudent reserve, please find a solution. Because once the train left the station, it caused a tremendous amount of friction in the workplace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Next speaker is Robert Kaufman. Mr. Kaufman, please.
Hello, Board of Directors. My name is Robert Kaufman. I'm a Golden Gate Transit bus driver. I've been in the district since 2010. And for almost a decade now, this has been on my sites. I've been aware of the unfunded problem, and I've been trying to draw attention to it. I've been attending pension board meetings since 2014, etc. And I've been here before you and spoke to you many times before concerning this issue. Here we are. Full measures have not been taken to go ahead and get the pension right. We're now in an alarming situation. So I think what has been said before me is completely fine, and I don't really need to reiterate most of it. I think the obvious is just in front of us. So I would say, however, And while I do not feel that it is actually the responsibility or liability of the drivers, it should be put on our shoulders at all. We are putting in money into the pension, etc. The problem isn't what we're paying now, it's what happened in the past. And what happened in the past is not our responsibility. We shouldn't have to go ahead and have that burden fall upon us. So, they were my coworkers, they're out the door, but they were your employees. So I ask you, please do the right thing and please fund the pension. Thank you very much. And please, I did go ahead and I did send a letter, went out through the secretary. If you can please take time and thoroughly read it, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Up next speaker is Dave Rhodey. Mr. Rhodey, please.
Good morning. My name is Dave Rhodey. I'm the San Francisco Policy Co-Chair for Al Gore's Climate Reality Project. It's time to get serious about what the climate crisis encompasses. We know that our excessive use of fossil fuels has created a heat-trapping layer of greenhouse gases in Earth's stratosphere, which is causing global warming. But global warming is just one part of the climate crisis. We're also experiencing species extinction, unprecedented biodiversity loss. Climate change, combined with land use changes and pollution, especially the extensive use of pesticides and herbicides, is putting us on course for a loss of 40% of all Earth species by the end of this century. This biodiversity decline will upend ecosystems and destabilize human civilization. I bring this up, of course, after hearing District Engineer Bauer Furbush's recent reports on the district's wetland restoration project in Corte Madera. First, let me applaud the goal to restore these wetlands and hiring professionals like WRA Inc. to manage it. What concerns me, District Fear spoke to this last month, is the mention of herbicides that might be used to deal with invasive pampas and hardy grasses. Per the report, if herbicides are to be used, they will be ones approved by the Marin County Parks Department. I have a chemist check this list of 19 different herbicides approved by Marin County Parks. A few of them are naturally based, most of them are not. One of the treatments highly recommended by environmentalists is not even on the list. It's called hypothermal treatment and is especially effective on pampas grass. It's a simple hot water treatment of the roots. I know this is more detailed than any of you want to get to, because after all, you're in the transportation business, not in the wetland restoration business. But you are in the business of land management. In the face of the climate crisis, any and all land management, whether it's wetlands or other district properties or your own backyard, needs to prioritize biodiversity, sustaining it, not adding to its decline. Please do not use herbicides unless you have solid evidence that they are not poisonous to life on land and in the bay. And please ask WRA Inc. to look into hypothermal treatment. I'd also like to applaud your respectful consultation with the Coastal Miwok in your name selection process for the new MV Liwa ferry. I understand that it's likely to use hydrogen fuel. As disappointed as I am that you're not moving to all electric ferries, I hope the hell you'll be using green hydrogen to power the Liwa, not one of the methane-based hydrogen fuels that are worse than either bio or petrodiesel. As Rachel Carson, the author of Silent Spring, said, the question is whether any civilization can wage relentless war on life without destroying itself and without losing the right to be called civilized. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodey. Now we'll move. Do you have anyone else in the room who wishes to speak? Then I will move to the speakers online. Ms. Bach, would you introduce the first speaker, please?
Good morning, certainly. Our first speaker is Kimberly Renee Gamboa. Ms. Gamboa?
Yes, good morning. My name is Kimberly Renee Gamboa, and I'm holding one of my favorite photos of my 18-year-old son, Kyle Emerson Gamboa, smiling from ear to ear in his high school class picture. Kyle jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge on Friday, September 20th, 2013, at 11:45 a.m. The Golden Gate Bridge District Board and staff, the Bridge Rail Foundation, financial supporters, the mental health and suicide prevention advocates, construction staff, suicide survivors, and all of the families and friends of lost ones to the Golden Gate Bridge. We all support each other, and together, through dedication and unwavering effort, the completion of a suicide deterrent on the Golden Gate Bridge is near. Although the suicide deterrent is not yet complete, it is already saving lives, and once the net is complete, it will save countless lives in the future. The suicide deterrent is making a monumental difference, not only in the lives of potential suicide victims, but also in so many lives impacted by a suicide. Thank you so much for caring in this extraordinary effort to save lives, to save someone on the worst day of their life.
And thank you so much, Ms. Gamboa. Ms. Bach, the next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is David Pilpel. David, go ahead.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Good morning, David Pilpel. So a number of brief comments. I listened to the meetings yesterday and this morning, but I did not comment. Sometimes listening can be valuable, and I found that. Next, I respectfully disagree with Shane on an earlier comment. I think the issue for operators is average run pay and total compensation. I may have comments in the future on the 5 and 10 year projections plus the compensation study that was discussed this morning. I think that remote public comment has increased public involvement and reduced barriers to participation. I hope the district will continue having it. I note that Justine sets a very professional tone moderating the call. I think others should model her approach in their work. And I don't believe there have been any problems with callers over the last 3.5 years that I am aware of. Perhaps somebody can mute their line, though. I look forward to the presentation and discussion today on item 10A, the ATU retirement board update, and perhaps you'll reopen public comment at that time based on the discussion. I have commented previously about the November board and committee meetings, and I really hope that APEC and the security considerations around that will be considered in planning for those meetings next month. And finally, given events elsewhere in the U.S. and the world recently, I hope that we will all be thinking about innocent civilians, proportionality, safety, security, threats, and violence. And as relates to this agency, I hope that district facilities will all be protected and safe. Thinking about people everywhere. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Pilpel. Ms. Bach, the next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is James Lindsay. James, go ahead.
Good morning, board members. My name is James Lindsay. I'm an international vice president for the Amalgamated Transit Union, representing every public agency in the state of California and others. I just want to bring attention to you in the regards to the pension. We've been in negotiations the last few that I've been involved in with the district. The ATU has given up quite a bit, and we have studied this pension, and one of the main issues is underfunding. The district has underfunded this plan for a numerous number of years, and every actuary that I speak to throughout the rest of my region all say the same thing, that until you start funding the actuary's contribution rate, you're not going to climb out of any hole. There is no other public agency in the state of California that does not pay the full contribution that the actuary is putting on. Even the plans that have had troubles themselves, that have been under 50% funded, they still contribute the full actuary contribution. Other issues that are dealing with them, we've heard from the district's negotiators that we need to make changes to the ATU benefit side of it, and we have made some changes. We don't believe we can make all the ones that the district is putting forth because we don't feel like getting sued. The district needs to make these full contributions that the actuaries are requesting in order for this plan to get out of the trouble that it's in. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Ms. Bach, do we have anyone else on the line?
President Terrio, if you don't mind, we did have several people who joined after polling was closed. Would you mind if I polled again?
Not at all. Please do.
Thank you so much. If you'd like to speak at the board meeting this morning, please use ** to unmute yourself and give me your name. Again, if you'd like to speak at the board meeting this morning, please use ** to unmute yourself and give me your name. Okay, I'm not hearing anybody else.
And thank you, Ms. Bach. That is it for public comment. General Manager Mulligan, you traditionally have a few things to say afterwards. Go ahead, please.
Sure, I'll try to be responsive to some of the public comments. For those that commented on the pension, I'll respond in much more detail when we get to agenda item 10A, which is specific to that topic. And I will provide some context and background as I introduced Mr. Graham Schmidt, who is the actuary for the Golden Gate Transit Amalgamated Retirement Pension Plan. So I'll defer on going into detail on that item until it's appropriately on the agenda. But I would like to start by thanking all the speakers. I would like to start off by thanking Ms. Kimberly Renee Gamboa, whose son died 10 years and 1 month ago at the Golden Gate Bridge. She and her husband, Manuel, have been fabulous advocates and keeping us moving along. Completion of the net is near, and it's covered in the engineer's report. But near the end of this calendar year, there'll be netting or fencing up along the entire length of the bridge. Not all the netting will be sewn yet, but it will be up and stretched out. And where nets have been erected, they have drastically reduced fatalities and jumps at those locations. So we're really looking forward to it. Just to remind everyone that the net works serving as a deterrent. Suicidal people don't want to hurt themselves. They don't want to jump into a stainless steel wire rope net down 20 feet that'll hurt. It also offers hope to despondent people who come out to the bridge. They'll see that the community cares and it's attempting to hold them, keep them safe. And finally, it serves as a second chance. So we're excited. And once the net is all sewn up and completed, we will hold an event with those that helped us get to this juncture to commemorate that occasion sometime next year. So I just wanted to say that publicly. With respect to the speakers on the pension, I want to thank Mr. James Lindsay for his leadership during negotiations. We very, very much appreciate the time of the International Vice President representing all the ATU operators in California, among all the operators, being at the table and being a steady hand on the helm. I'd like to thank Mr. Dave Herrera for his 22 years of service. He used to drive the Route 27 route pretty typically at a time that was familiar to both of us. And so I'm glad that he has followed in his father's footsteps, and we are the beneficiaries of that. With respect to the pension, I will offer that the district does have a moral obligation to make sure all of our employees after a long career have a pension and have medical benefits. And like I said, I'll talk more about that when we get to agenda item 10A. Mr. John Holden talked about threats in the workplace. There was an issue that arose quite some time ago now where a threatening letter was posted that named 10 drivers by name. And the individual that posted that letter no longer works for the district. And our heart goes out to anyone that's threatened in the workplace, and we immediately take appropriate action. With respect to his concerns about PEPRA, PEPRA is a state law, the Public Employees Pension Reform Act of 2013. It made changes in public employee pensions. The Golden Gate TARP trustees made changes that affect newer operators such as Mr. Holden. With respect to his concerns about his union, the district does not get involved between our employees and their unions. We have an employer-employee resolution that was passed before a few people in this table maybe even were born. That we still adhere to today, plus there's state and federal laws that deal with that. So we have no role in that matter. And then finally, for our last two speakers, Mr. Dave Rohde, herbicides have not been used at the Corte Madera Ecological Reserve. The engineer's report will provide updates on that every month, and there'll probably be more discussion on that later. And for Mr. Pilpel, I just want to thank him for his thoughtful attention to all that we do. And that concludes my response to all of the public comment that we received.
Thank you, Mr. Mulligan. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. The directors have received copies of the minutes of the various meetings. Do they have questions, comments, corrections on those minutes? Director Theory.
Are you taking all of the committees together or one by one, all together?
As you prefer, but my intent was to take them all together.
So items B1 and B2, I would like to recuse myself. So if the motion could be made without those and then a separate motion, then I can step out.
Items B1 and B2.
Yes.
So we'll do a division of the item and take those separately. On any of the others, do we have any questions or comments? And those are B1 and B2 for the Board of Directors meeting, are they?
It's 8. Wait, I'm sorry.
Not a committee meeting, but
Actually, no.
Building and
It's
operating.
okay. It's okay.
Building and
I see
operating.
what
Thank
you're
you.
doing. Yeah.
So
It's when we get to that item. Yeah.
okay. And that's the Building and Operating Committee of which day?
No, today.
Today.
It's
Okay.
actually the reports. I was ahead of myself.
So this
I'm
is
ahead
not
of
this is-
myself. We're okay.
This is
with
not the minutes and
Nope. Nope.
okay, this is farther
the
along.
minutes.
Very good, thank you, I understand. All right, so then we will take the consent calendar as a whole. And are there questions or comments on the items in the consent calendar then? Then I'll look for a motion to approve.
So moved.
There's a motion and a couple of possible seconds out there. You have those, Madam Secretary. Then a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. It's voting on item number 5 under consent, and we're going to take Director Conroy first. Dorsey?
Aye.
Ingardio?
Aye.
Garbarino? Aye. Giudice?
Yes.
Roseball?
Aye.
Hernandez? Musty? Moulton Peters is absent. Parr is absent. Rabbit?
Aye.
Rodoni?
Aye.
Safai is absent. Snyder?
Aye.
Stephanie? Aye. Thier? Aye. Second Vice President Hill?
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran? And President Terrio?
Yes,
Thank you. We're still at 16. Mr. Safai has not arrived yet. Okay.
that's right, 16 is plenty. So that motion passes. So next would be the General Manager's report. Back to General Manager Mulligan.
Thank you, President Therio, members of the board, staff, members of the public. My written report is before you. I will highlight a couple items. First, I'll talk about recreational ferry ridership. Because while overall traffic is down, there's less travel between the North Bay and San Francisco, tourism and recreational traffic seem quite strong. So we just concluded our summer season for the ferry service to Oracle Park. And surprisingly, but very pleasantly so, we have welcome news in that we exceeded 2018 and 2019 ridership, the 2 years before the pandemic. And I dare say, in spite of the Giants, so the fact that ridership is back in such a fashion on our ferry is very encouraging. Just to remind the board, we also do recreational service to Angel Island 7 days a week, which is great for kids, but also folks that want to escape the city once in a while. So recreational ridership is doing quite well, and just wanted to recognize that. Overall ridership, though, is still down in the corridor. Bridge traffic overall is down about 15% compared to the same month pre-pandemic. But commute traffic is where we really see the decline. It's down about 30% still. Some good weeks it's down 29%. So people are not commuting into San Francisco between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m., but otherwise folks are out and about. And traffic is slowly growing, bridge, bus, and ferry, but we have a long ways to go before we're at pre-pandemic levels. Like I said, overall bridge traffic is down 15%. Our most recent week bus ridership was down about 52%, so we carried almost half of our pre-pandemic customers. And on the ferry side, we do a little bit better, but it is seasonal, and that we're down 43%, so we carried almost 60% of our pre-pandemic customers. So what we're carrying is not necessarily all the commute that we saw in the past, but we're carrying a lot of people, and the commute is slowly growing. So we are encouraged by that on bridge, bus, and ferry. Moving on, we do not have any service awards or retirees this month. Historically, for the newer board members, which is 10 of you that have never met in this room for a board meeting before. We invite up the retirees, and we invite people that celebrate 20 years or 25 years of service to the front. We give them bridge bling, and then we recognize them. But we have no one this month. We do have an employee of the month, but unfortunately they were not able to join us. And our employee of the month is a member of the Electricians Union. So I want to state for the record that the employees self-select the employee of the month. It is not selected by management. The individual is Fernando Quiroz Guzman, and he is the employee of the month for October 2023. He originally started with the district as a part-time lane worker, people that would put the tubes in. He progressed through some jobs here. He befriended some of our electrical staff, and he later went on and became an electrician, and he since came back to the district. He's a valued member of his team. His coworkers in his department and other departments relish working with him. And he's worked for a variety of places before he came here, but he started his career here, and he's hopefully going to end his career here, but as an electrician. He started in 2004 as a part-time lane worker. He's been as an electrician here since August 19th of 2019. In the ensuing years, prior to rejoining the district, he was an electrician for the city of Richmond, an electrician for Contra Costa Electric, and a lead maintenance staff member for the city of Larkspur. He was originally born in central Mexico. He attended high school at Berkeley High, and he went to Laney College to receive his electrician certification. He's been a resident of Richmond, California since 1997, where he lives with his wife, Anna, and their two daughters, Jennifer and Leslie. And in his spare time, he enjoys hiking and biking. So with that, we just want to give him a shout out. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here, but we look forward to bringing these individuals back to our meetings and to celebrate their success with the district. That concludes my report, and I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, General Manager Mulligan. Are there questions or comments on the General Manager's report? I'll throw a couple in. I hope that the new General Manager, Bob Melvin, is good not just for the Giants, but for the business of the Golden Bridge Highway and Transportation District. And also, in my time as president, and there's a couple months left in that, I've never had the opportunity to be up here when we honored somebody, one of the employees for their service. So there's 2 more months. Please get it done.
Yes. You know, thinking, I skipped over 2 topics that aren't in my written report I probably mentioned, because one of the speakers did, which was the bus rodeo. It was a fabulous event. Congressman Jared Huffman showed up, and he drove a bus through the obstacle course. He was coached by Keith Nunn from our bus division. If you ever want to drive a bus through the obstacle course, Keith was a great coach. The congressman did a fantastic job, and so all of our employees had a wonderful time at that. And finally, I probably should have mentioned APEC. It is coming to town. You're hearing more about it. For those that don't know, it's the Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. I just want you to know that your team, Bridge, Bus, and Ferry, will all be impacted by it. We're working with our state, local, and federal partners, and all is well. We look forward to APEC. We look forward to people coming in to experience the Bay Area and all of its splendor and glory. And we look forward to people coming to see the bridge as part of their exhibit here. So that secondarily concludes my report.
Okay. Any comments or questions on the secondary version of the report? Yes, Director Snyder.
Is Biden coming? He is coming to San Francisco. He will be meeting with President of China. APEC is represented by 21 economies in the Pacific Rim. Most of the leaders will be here for several days during that week. So there's a lot of protocols that are in place. There may be visitors to the bridge during that event. We'll wait and see.
Anyone else? Then let's move along from the General Manager's report to the Attorney's report. Mr. Manolius.
Good morning, everyone. My written report's before you. I'm happy to take any questions. And we do have a closed session on the calendar today, and as they go, it's an exciting one. So,
I'm never sure if it's good when an attorney's excited. Any questions or comments from the audience? I see none. And so we move along. Engineer's report. Mr. Everly.
Good morning, President Theriault, members of the board. The engineer's report is on the district webpage and B&O item was reported on yesterday. A couple items I just want to highlight. With regard to the Corte Madera marsh restoration project, our consultant did complete the first phase of the campus grass abatement last month, and it went very well. I also want to mention the Toll Plaza resurfacing project. Hopefully you've all noticed it's been resurfaced. It looks much nicer now. We have final striping and delineation remaining. We received final sign off on an elevator, so that's why we're all here today. So that's great. And then on the suicide deterrent project, I just want to update on the contractor's progress. So they are progressing with the net. The north tower is just about completed with the net all around that on both the east and west side. They're just beginning on the south tower and the east side at the Fourth Arch and south approach viaduct is also completed. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions or comments for Mr. Everly?
Yes, I have.
Yes, Director.
Yes, Mr. Everly. I wanted to discuss a little bit the comments that were in the engineer's report. What I had hoped for was that we would find a way not to spray herbicides in the Corte Madera marsh. So a thought that I had, and I did want to just say something about the comments in the report first. There was a comment that the IPM coordinator did not have experience with herbicide use for pampas grass. Now, the reason why that person would not have had experience is because Marin County does not allow herbicide to be sprayed on pampas grass. I don't want to get into the weeds here too much, but one of the reasons why we would not want to use, the report talks about substituting a herbicide called Flozifop. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, for glyphosate. But the reason why we would not want to use that is because it is actually toxic to fish and aquatic invertebrates. It also contaminates the surface and the groundwater. So I really believe the answer here is to go back and cut it again in 2 years. So what I'd like to ask is that you come back to us with the cost to recut this in 2 years and to not use the herbicide. Now, I understand that part of the difficulty is we don't know if we're going to cut anything because the hand pulling take care of this. So what I would like to do is you come back with the maximum cost as if you were re-pulling all of it again. And then I'd like to see a budget amendment for this contract in that amount. Now, as the directors know, and our attorney can confirm, every one of these contracts that are given out to our consultants and subconsultants has a clause that says the district can determine the work is not necessary just because you got an authorization for the funds does not mean it will be spent. So if year 2025 comes around and we see that none of this pampas grass and harding grass and everything else, other invasive species that they are contracted to take care of, let's just say there's nothing else grew back, right? Well, the contractor doesn't get that money. That money, it stays with the district. And I think that this is a way that we can ensure that we're not spraying herbicide and other environmentally toxic things into a habitat restoration project, which is a great project. But if we kill all the fish, it's not so great. So I'm hopeful that that can come back to us.
If it's the board pleasure, we'll come back with that.
So if I may jump in, just no herbicide use at this site. They did mechanical means for this cycle. The original staff report talked about after a couple of rounds, if we still had challenges, we would consider it. But if it's a pleasure of the board, we can, negotiate an amendment and come back in the next month or two, depending on the negotiations, with an item to amend that contract to increase the budget, so that the option to use herbicide each year, which we would not have done without coming back to the board anyway, is not even an option for a future board, if that's your pleasure.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see.
Director Maston, your hand was up and then you nodded and it went down. You're still looking.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I brought this issue up yesterday, and I agree with Director Sears that I support what she's proposing, which is more or less a ban on the use of herbicide. This project and others.
Yes, I would like to see that as well.
Anyone else with regard to Mr. Everly's report?
Do we need a vote or do we just?
It's not on the agenda, but staff heard there's an interest in us negotiating an amendment coming back at a future board meeting in the next couple of months for the B&O committee to consider and then recommend to the board action on a potential amendment to the contract.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one request for Mr. Everly, and that is comment briefly on the current state of the CMGC process for the seismic retrofit. I was going to say phase 3 seismic retrofit, but that's no longer the name.
Correct. Suspension. Seismic retrofit. So as was stated in the report, we put out an RFQ for proposals for CMGC entities for pre-construction services. We received 3 proposals, and we reviewed those proposals. We found all of them to be responsive. We held interviews with the 3 firms and ranked them. The selection committee ranked them. And so in the RFQ process, the next step is to look at the cost proposal. It's a sealed cost proposal, just we're looking at from the highest ranked firm. So we open up that cost proposal from the highest ranked firm, and then we review that, and then if we accept it, we can just accept it, but we always negotiate and understand the full scope and cost associated with that. If we're successful negotiating, then we will come to the B&O committee with an item to enter into a contract with that firm. If we're not successful, then the process is to open the envelope from the firm, et cetera, try and negotiate that way. But we're hopeful that we're able to negotiate with the highest ranked firm, and either the end of the year, we're hopeful we could come to the B&O committee.
Thank you, Mr. Everly. Anyone else with questions or comments for Mr. Everly? Then thank you for your report. Then we move along to business, and we start with the Transportation Committee. These items were discussed at some length yesterday. But Chair Hill, would you begin your report, please?
Thank you, President Terrio. The Transportation Committee recommends the approval of items 8A1 and delegate authority to the general manager as the accountable executive to designate goals in Golden Gate Transit's agency safety plan, and to approve the updates to the agency safety plan in October 2023 in compliance with the Federal Transit Administration's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan rule, as detailed in the staff report, and I so move.
There is a motion. Do you have a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, you can have a roll call vote.
Great, thank you. We're voting on 8A1 with the first and second, starting with Director Conroy. Aye. Dorsey.
Aye.
Pingardio.
Aye.
Barbarino. Aye. Giudice.
Yes.
Roseball.
Aye.
Hernandez. Aye. Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters is absent. Carr is absent. Rabbit.
Aye.
Rodoni.
Aye.
Safai is absent. Ryder.
Aye.
Stephanie. Aye. Beer.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Aye.
First Vice President Cochran. And President Terrio.
Yes.
Thank you. We're 16.
Thank you. Chair, anything else first?
Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chair Hill. Next is the report of, and I'm watching you, Director Theodore. Don't worry. Next is the report of the Building and Operating Committee. These items were discussed yesterday, some at length. Chair Garbarino, would you give your report?
Thank you, President Terrio. I will. The Building and Operating Committee.
I should say on item 2, the first item on the report, I believe Director Thier has asked to recuse herself.
Yes, on items B1 and
B1 and B2, excuse me.
B1 and B2.
So you need to leave the room, and we'll have one come and get you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. The Building and Operating Committee is recommending approval of board agenda item number 8B1. which is to authorize execution of the second addendum to the 12th Amendment to Professional Services Agreement number 2011B2, Design Services for the Golden Gate Bridge Physical Suicide Deterrent System with HND Corporation in amount not to exceed $1,400,000, and increase the fiscal year 2023 Bridge Division capital budget for project number 1526, Golden Gate Bridge Physical Suicide Deterrent System construction in the amount of $1,400,000 in concurrence with the Finance Auditing Committee as detailed in the staff report, and I so move.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A couple of possible seconds. Madam Secretary, you'll grab one of them. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, then please take us through another roll call vote.
Thank you. It's item 8B1 with first and second. Director Conroy. Aye. Aye. Director Dorsey.
Aye.
Engardio.
Aye.
Garbarino.
Aye.
Giudice.
Yes.
Roseball.
Aye.
Hernandez.
Aye.
Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters is absent. Barr is absent. Rabbit.
Aye.
Rodoni.
Aye.
Safai is absent. Snyder.
Aye.
Stephanie. Aye. Pierre has recused herself and is not in the room. Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terrio.
Yes.
Thank you. We will have 15 ayes.
Thank you. Chair Garbarino, the next item, please.
Thank you again, President Terrio. The next item is number 8B2, which is to authorize execution of the 13th Amendment to Professional Services Agreement number 2010B1, Golden Gate Suspension Bridge Seismic Retrofit Design Services with HDR Engineering Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $351,150 for services associated with project number 1923, Golden Gate Suspension Bridge Seismic Retrofit Project. Establish a 10% contingency for the amendment in the amount of $35,100 as detailed in the staff report, and I so move.
There is a motion again. Is there again a second? Second. A couple possible seconds. Any discussion on this motion? And again, seeing none, Madam Secretary, again, a roll call vote.
Thank you. Item 8B2 with the first and second, starting with Director Conroy. Aye. Dorsey.
Aye.
Engardio.
Aye.
Farina. Aye. Giudice.
Yes.
Roseball.
Aye.
Hernandez.
Aye.
Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters absent. Barr is absent. Rabbit.
Aye.
Rodoni.
Aye.
Safai is absent. Snyder.
Aye.
Stephanie. Aye. Pierre is recused. Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terry.
Yes.
Thank you. We're back to 15 again.
15, and this motion passes. I believe we can ask Director Thayer back into the room. And the motion, we'll give a moment for her to come back. Welcome back, Director Thayer. Chair Guino, continue your report, please.
Thank you once again, President Terrio. The next item is item number 8B3, which is to authorize payment of cancellation costs in the amount of $299,576 to Pacific Power Group of Kent, Washington for the termination of contract number 2022F084, CARB compliant Tier 4 diesel engines as detailed in staff report as so moved.
The motion there, and looking for a second.
Second.
And a couple of seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Again, no discussion, and so Madam Secretary, a roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Voting on item 8B3 with the first and second, starting with Director Conroy. Aye.
Aye.
Engardio.
Aye.
Garbarino.
Aye.
Giudice.
Yes.
Roseball.
Aye.
Hernandez.
Aye.
Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters is absent. Barr is absent. Rabbit.
Aye.
Rodoni.
Aye.
Safai is absent. Snyder.
Aye.
Stephanie. Aye. Pierre.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terrio.
Yes.
Thank you. 16 ayes.
16 ayes. That passes. Not to bias the consideration, but the next item is kind of a happy one. Director Garbarino.
There you go. Thank you again, President Terrio, and for that opener. Next, I have item number 8B4, which is to authorize rescinding resolution number 2023-031, which approved the name of motor vessel, the Alampali, for the district's new vessel and related actions, and to approve MV Liwa as the name of the new ferry vessel, as approved by the Federated Tribes of the Great Rancheria, and further authorize staff to file the name MV Liwa with the United States Coast Guard as detailed in the staff report, and I so move.
You want a second?
Second.
Okay.
Thank you to this board and the staff for the cultural sensitivity that you've shown throughout this process. Appreciate it. Yes. Yeah, Lewa, you're right.
And anyone else on the board want to comment on this particular item? No, then we can have another roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. Item 8B4 with the first and second, starting with Director Conroy. Aye. Dorsey.
Aye.
Engardio.
Aye.
Garbarino.
Aye.
Giudice.
Yes.
Roseball.
Aye.
Hernandez. Aye. Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters and Parr are both absent. Rabbit.
Aye.
Redoni.
Aye.
Safai is absent. Snyder.
Aye.
Stephanie.
Aye.
Deer.
Aye.
Second President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terry.
Yes.
Thank you. That is 16 ayes.
Thank you. Chair Garbarino, please continue.
Thank you again. And I finally have item number 8B5, which is to authorize award of on-call Microsoft and VMware professional service relative to contracts number 2023D006-01 to 2023D006-05 to E-Plus Technology Incorporated of Heritage, Virginia, iShift LLC of Scottsdale, Arizona, Zones LLC of Auburn, Washington, Soft Choice Corporation of Chicago, Illinois, and Worldwide Technology LLC of St. Louis, Missouri, for a 3-year base term with up to 2 additional 1-year option terms for a total aggregate not to exceed the amount of $3,750,000 for the 5-year term, as detailed in this report. And so moved.
And there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And there's a second. Any discussion on this motion? We're helping the national economy here, I see. Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
We're voting on item 8B5 with the first and second, starting with Director Conroy. Aye. Dorsey.
Aye.
Engardio.
Aye.
Garbarino.
Aye.
Giudice.
Yes.
Roseball.
Aye.
Hernandez. Aye. Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters and Parr are absent. Rabbit.
Aye.
Redoni.
Aye.
Safai is absent. Snyder.
Aye.
Stephanie.
Aye.
Deer.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Green.
Yes.
69.
Chair Garbarino, have you had quite enough of us?
It was a good day, both yesterday and today, all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation, Chair Garbarino. We move along next to the Finance and Auditing Committee. And again, these items were discussed at some length yesterday. Chair Rabbit, it's yours.
Thank you very much, President Terrio. The Finance Auditing Committee brings forward 3 items today for the board's consideration. The Finance Auditing Committee recommends the approval of item 8C1 to establish a new Ferry Division capital project, project number 2446, known as the Spalding Replacement Project, in the fiscal year 23-24 Ferry Division capital budget in the amount of $60 million as detailed in the staff report, and I so move.
And a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? I will actually ask, for the sake of Mr. Rhodey, for a little clarification on the powering of these vessels.
They are not hydrogen fuel cell vessels. We are participating in Island on San Francisco Bay. We did earlier this year contribute $300,000 to WIDA for a 6-month lease and operations of a vessel known as the Sea Change. It was towed in San Francisco Bay many months ago. I had originally offered our board president to be at a press event in the springtime, but it still does not have its certificate of inspection from the Coast Guard. It still can't run more than 25 minutes. So these vessels will be the latest CARB compliant Tier 4 diesel engines with selective catalytic recovery and with particulate filters included in them. And they'll have a modern hull form. We're using the same designer as WIDA, and WIDA's most recent boat consumes 20% less fuel than earlier versions of it, just based on the changes in the hull form. But with respect to propulsion, it will be the latest CARB compliant diesel engines. And we recognize that we are going to transition to electric this time based on the our trips. and the expectations of our customers with respect to speed and the fact that they have choice. They could choose to drive into San Francisco or take a bus if the boat is slow. That at this juncture, we're still, in the business of diesel ferries.
Any of the directors with any additional questions or comments on this item? I see none. Madam Secretary, a roll call vote.
Thank you. We're voting on item 8C1 with the first and second, starting with Director Conroy. Aye. Dorsey.
Aye.
Engardio.
Aye.
Garbarino. Aye. Giudice.
Yes.
Roseball.
Aye.
Hernandez. Aye. Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters and Parr are absent. Rabbit.
Aye.
Redoni. Safai is absent. Snyder.
Aye.
Stephanie. Aye. Thier.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terry.
Yes.
Thank you. That's 69.
69 ayes, that motion passes. Chair Rabbit, please continue.
Thank you, President Terrio. The next is the approval of item 8C2, which approves actions as detailed in the staff report relative to request for proposals number 2023-D-039, insurance advisors and brokerage services, effective November 1, 2023, as follows. 1, authorize execution of the contract with USI Insurance Services for a 3-year term for a total not to exceed cost of $384,000 with 2 additional 1-year options for the district's casualty and property insurance program. And 2, authorize execution of a contract with USI Insurance Services for a 3-year term for a total not to exceed cost of $120,000 with 2 additional 1-year options for the district's marine insurance programs. And I so move.
There is a motion. Second. And there's a second. Any discussion on this motion? There is none. Madam Secretary, once again, roll call vote.
Thank you. This is item 8C2 with the first and second, starting with Director Conroy. Aye. Dorsey.
Aye.
Leo.
Aye.
Carbino. Aye. Giudice.
Yes.
Rosal.
Yes.
Hernandez. Aye. Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters and Parr are absent. Rabbit.
Aye.
Redoni.
Aye.
Safai is absent. Snyder.
Aye.
Stephanie. Aye. Thier. Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terrio.
Yes.
Thank you. 69.
16 ayes, it passes. Chair Rabbit, go ahead.
Thank you, President Terrio. The last item for recommendation, approval of item 8C3, which is to receive the updated 5 and 10-year financial projection for the period of fiscal year 24-25 through fiscal year 33-34, outlined in the appendices of the staff report, and I so move.
Second on this? There's a second back there. Okay. Any discussion on this motion? Once again, no discussion. Once again, a roll call vote.
Thank you. Voting on item 8C3 with the first and second, starting with Director Conroy. Aye. Dorsey.
Aye.
Engardio.
Aye.
Garbarino. Aye. Giudice.
Yes.
Roseball.
Aye.
Hernandez. Aye. Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters and Parr are absent. Rabbit.
Aye.
Redoni.
Aye.
Safai is absent. Snyder.
Aye.
Stephanie. Aye. Thier. Aye. Second Vice President.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terrio.
As yesterday, in recognition of the projection's inevitable imperfections, yes.
69.
This motion passes. Chair Rabbit, I believe that's all you have for us.
That's right, Mr. President. That concludes my report.
And thank you for that. That is it for business before us today. We do have a special order of business, however. And so, Mr. Schmidt, if you would take us through your presentation. Sure. Mr. Schmidt, General Manager Mulligan has asked for a moment to address the board before you begin. So, General Manager Mulligan.
Thank you. Just to provide some context, some background, and hope path forward. Bridge District employees participate in one of 4 different pension plans based on a collective bargaining agreement. But all of our employees are covered by a pension. One of these plans is known as the Golden Gate Transit Amalgamated Retirement Plan, or GG-TARP, which for a variety of reasons is in much, much more dire fiscal straits than the other 3 pension plans. Current and retired district bus operators are the participants in GG-TARP. The district appoints 3 of its board members to serve as trustees on the GG-TARP Trust Board, and 3 ATU members also serve. Legally, the trustees serve as fiduciaries. The trust board establishes and modifies pension benefits, while contributions are negotiated between the district and the ATU as part of the collective bargaining process. I might add that of the 4 pension plans our employees participate in, we negotiate contributions for them, and only one of them has the guaranteed ARC, which is the CalPERS pension plan. At its meeting on August 9th, the trust board met and they heard from their actuary, Mr. Graham Schmidt, about the dire fiscal straits. And based on that, it led to this board asking that he come and do a presentation to all of you so you can appreciate how big the challenge is. As background, the district contributes 34.5% of bus operator wages to GT TARP. And I might add, that's a higher percentage of wages than we contribute to the other 3 pension plans for our other employees. Additionally, in its most recent collective bargaining agreement, the district and the union agreed that we would make a one-time $5.2 million contribution to GT TARP. And coupled with that, we would undertake a very important task. That task is a path to solving the fiscal solvency challenges of this. That task is, and I'll quote this because it's very important, as it appears in the signed tentative agreement, as it appears in the MOU that was voted on by our employees. It talks about creating a pension working group comprised of equal number of district GT TARP trustees, union GT TARP trustees, and attorneys for both sides. Will begin meeting immediately to discuss rehabilitation plan to address future underfunding. And this is underlined in the signed tentative agreement, akin to those required of jointly trusted defined benefit pension plans in, quote, endangered or critical funding status, unquote, under the Pension Protection Act. I highlight that because that is vital. That is a path forward. You may recall last month, as part of my general manager's report, I informed to you the great news that the Inland Boatmen's Union pension plan had just been certified in the green zone. It had previously been in the red zone, but its trustees adopted a rehabilitation plan consistent with the language I underlined, or that is underlined in the staff report and in the assigned TA. So it's exciting that we have a path forward to fiscal solvency. It will require extra contributions on the part of this board, and we look forward to doing that as part of a rehabilitation plan. The language to create the rehabilitation plan would include changes to benefits and contributions in order to improve its fiscal situation in the long term. Acting as fiduciaries, I assume the trust board would adopt the rehabilitation plan. It's important to note for the record that this plan gives away money. This plan is in DEFCON 1 and it continues today to give away money it does not have. I'll give you just one example. Other pension plans follow standard practices so that when an employee retires and they've been in the pension plan for a long time, they retire to get their pension, they have a choice to check a box if they want their surviving spouse to get their pension or not. If you check the box at every other pension plan that you want your spouse to get that pension when you retire, your pension is reduced based on the age of your spouse. Today, as we speak still for this pension plan, if a bus operator marries a spouse who's several decades younger than them, and they're married to that person for 1 year and 1 day before they retire, they check the box, they'll get the same monthly pension as a single bus driver. It's not fair to the single bus driver, but it's brutal to the finances of the plan. That is one of many examples where this pension plan gives away money. So that's why it's vital that we embrace a rehabilitation plan as agreed to in our most recent collective bargaining agreement as a path forward. That language did say immediately. It hasn't started yet, but we look forward to launching that effort next month with our trustees. I just wanted to make sure that you're all aware that it will take additional contributions, but giving away money is fiscally irresponsible. Arguably, 20 years ago, when this pension plan dipped below 100%, the pension trust board should have stopped giving away money. When it dipped below 90%, they should have stopped giving money. When it's below 80%, 70%, 60%. Today, it's at a 50% funding level, and today it does give away money. So it's important for you to realize that. Some changes are supposedly coming up at the next pension trust meeting. We haven't seen those, or the bargaining agreement that included some changes that we negotiated were signed over 6 months ago. So we look forward to working collectively, collaboratively with our trustees and the ATU trustees to create a rehabilitation plan. It is a path forward. We have a moral obligation to fix this pension plan, but it's important for you to understand just how dire the fiscal straits are. So I'm pleased to introduce the plan's actuary, Mr. Graham Schmidt.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Mr. Mulligan, and thank you, Chair Terrio. Appreciate your service on the retirement board as well. I'm going to give just a bit of background on the pension plan. We'll talk a little bit about the plan's current financial condition. I'll talk about the liabilities, the assets, the funded status, and the thing that we'll refer to frequently in this presentation is the actually determined contribution. Okay, so I'll give some context and definitions to those words. I don't know how familiar you are with actuarial topics. I don't assume you know every single acronym that we're going to throw around. We'll talk a little bit about how the plan got to where it was in terms of the history and the trends over time, and then some projections looking forward based on the current financial status and the current contribution levels, and then what would happen if the plan were to be fully funded on an actuarial basis. Okay, so I'm going to try to get into just some basic education stuff, just so we understand the same terms in terms of the liabilities in particular. First, we talk about what is the plan. The plan it's a system designed to provide pension benefits to the members on behalf of the district. And why do you need an actuary? Well, you need an actuary for helping to determine what the liabilities are and comparing those liabilities to the assets. And from there, coming up with a plan of what level of contributions would be necessary to fund the benefits over time. So once a year, we do what's called an actuarial valuation, right? And the first step of that actuarial valuation is what you see here is we are projecting the benefits that are expected to be paid to all of the current members of the plan. That includes the retirees and the active members. So currently, benefits coming out of the plan are around $16 million. That is expected to increase as active members retire. And then those benefit payments decline as those members pass away. And again, what we're showing here is just the current members of the plan as of January 1st, 2023. So then we take that projection of benefits and we split it up into two pieces. The portion that is expected to be covered by investment earnings, and we have an assumption that the assets of the plan are expected to earn 6.75% per year. And then the remainder of those benefits is called the present value of the benefits, right? The value in today's dollars. So if we had the assets that were necessary to fund the benefits for the expected lifetime for all of the members right now, those would be the gold bars. And then the blue bars above those would be the investment earnings that would cover the remainder of those benefit payments if all of our assumptions are met, including when people are going to retire, how long they're going to live, and what they're going to be making when they retire. If we take out those future investment earnings, what we're left with, again, is called the present value or the value in today's dollars. So we can add those up for all of the different years, and we get a single sum as of the valuation date. So as of January 1st, 2023, the expected value for all of those benefit payments was about $215 million. We take that amount and we divide it into two pieces. There's the accrued liability, the bottom bar. That's the benefits that are associated with your current retirees, plus the benefits that have been earned to date by your current members based on the service they've already accumulated. And then that bar at the top is what they're expected to earn for future years of service for your current active members. It's about $16 million. This is a very key feature about this plan in that most of your liability, the vast majority of your liability, is associated with benefits that have already been earned, not what is expected to be earned in the future. So to the extent that you make any changes are made in terms of what benefits people are earning going forward, it has a very limited impact on the overall finances of the plan because most of the liabilities are associated with people who are no longer working, right? $200 million is the liability associated with people who have already left and the service that have already been earned by your current membership. Okay, we take out the top piece, and what we're left with is called the actuarial accrued liability, right? That's the funding target. That's what you would like to have on hand as of the valuation date, so that if all of your assumptions are met, you'd be able to cover the benefit promises to those members for the rest of their expected lifetime. So what we do next is we compare that liability to the assets. And as of January 1st, the asset number was just over $87 million. The valuation report also contains another number. It's called the actuarial or smooth value of assets. We use this smooth value of assets in some ways to help sort of minimize some of the volatility in the actually determined contributions that happen from year to year, because we know the investment markets swing around a lot, right? Our liabilities don't typically change an enormous amount from year to year, but we know that some years the assets can go up by 20%, down by 15%. So we used a smooth value when we're trying to determine sort of long-term expected cost of the plan. Currently, that actual value is a little bit above the market value because you have some deferred losses, some losses that we haven't yet recognized in that smooth value. The next step is to review, question.
Yeah, is it okay if I ask the question now?
For sure.
What are some of the losses that you're talking about?
So this is purely talking about investment losses.
Right.
So we use a 3-year smoothing period. So what we're looking at are the things that have happened over the last few years, right?
Okay. Like the interest
2022,
rate.
but it's not, 2022 was a bad year in the investment markets, right? Stocks lost money. Bonds lost money. It's one of the first times in a long time where you've had both losing money at the same time. 2021 was actually a great year, but 2022 was not good, and we'll see how 2023 goes.
I ask that questions go through the chair. Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, please continue.
Okay, so we take those assets and we compare them to the liabilities, right? So as of January 1st, you had about $200 million in liabilities. And on a smooth basis, that smooth value of the assets was only $95 million. So the difference between those things is what we call the unfunded accrued liability, which was over $100 million as of the beginning of the year. If we look at the market value of assets, the assets that you actually have that the plan actually had in the trust as of December 31st, that shortfall is over $110 million. Okay. The other measure that we report in the valuation is the funded status or the funded ratio. And we get at that by we divide the assets by the liabilities. Last year, that number was about 48% on the smooth basis and just under 44% on a market value basis. That declined a lot from the prior year when it was still over 50% because the returns were quite poor in 2022. The plan lost money on its investments, as did almost all other pension plans that I work with. So that funded ratio is below 50% on both a smooth basis and an actuarial basis. And again, that is the lowest funded ratio, at least amongst the plans that I work on in the state of California. The next step, once we've compared the assets to the liabilities, is to come up with what we call the actuarially determined contribution. And that is the contribution that's necessary to pay off that unfunded liability, as well as cover the expected future accruals or future benefits being earned by the active employees over a reasonable period of time. And we have these things called ASOPs, or actuarial standards of practice, that define what represents a reasonable actuarially determined contribution. Basically, how long of a period of time can you pay that unfunded liability off of? And 20 years is about the threshold on that in terms of the actuarial standards of practice. So we'll get to it in a little bit, but the amortization policy, or the payment plan that the retirement board has structured to pay off that unfunded liability, according to this actually determined contribution, focuses on these 20-year periods. Okay. So the actually determined contribution for the current fiscal year was just under $11.5 million, expressed as a percentage of projected payroll. And again, this is a projection of payroll based on the information that we have as of the valuation date, is 70% of payroll. That contribution is made up of 3 pieces. The biggest piece, over $8 million, is the payment that would be necessary to fund that unfunded liability payment over a 20-year schedule. It's not a flat contribution schedule. We'll talk about the schedule in a minute, but over $8 million is associated with that unfunded liability payment. Then there's an additional $2.5 million to cover the benefits that are earned based on this year's service by your current active members, plus about $500,000 to cover the administrative expenses for the plan. On the right-hand side, we divide those pieces up as percentages of payroll. And it's important to note this is percentages of pensionable payroll. Not all payroll, not all compensation is pensionable, particularly for PEPRA members, things that don't count in terms of the pensionable payroll. So this is pensionable pay. So that's the total amount. That's split between the employers and the employees. The employees' contributions, the newer members, as you've heard referenced today, they're known as the PEPRA members, anybody hired after 2013. They are responsible for half of the normal cost, or the cost of the benefits that they're earning this year. And the legacy members are also contributing an amount towards towards their pension payment, over 8% of pay. That leads to an expected contribution for the current workforce of about $1.2 million. The difference between that and the total actual cost is what's technically known as the actually determined contribution, or the ADC, which is $10.2 million, almost 63% of pay for the current fiscal year. Okay. If we compare that to the negotiated rates being made, you can see where the shortfall is coming, right? The total contribution that's currently being made by the district and the employees for the current fiscal year is just under 42% pay. Now, this doesn't include that additional $5 million payment that we've been told is being made to the plan this year. This is the negotiated rates that are in the current contract. So you can see there's a shortfall there, right? Over 28% of pay difference between the actually determined contribution and the current negotiated rates. I'm going to show one more contribution bar here, and this is what we call the tread water rate. So this is the contribution that would be needed just to cover the cost of the benefits being earned this year, plus the interest on the unfunded liability. And when we talk about the interest on the unfunded liability, we're talking about interest calculated at that assumed rate of return on plan assets. So basically, this debt is accumulating at a rate of 6.75% per year. If the plan were making a contribution of over 60, just about 63% of pay in total between the members and the employer, and all of our assumptions are met, that unfunded liability amount of $113 million roughly would expect it to be fairly stable from one year to the next. It wouldn't go away, but it wouldn't increase. But that also relies on all of our assumptions being met, earning exactly 6.75% each year, everybody retiring, dying exactly when we expect them to. Okay, so that's what we call the tread water rate. And you can see that there's still a shortfall there of about $3.5 million between those current negotiated rates and that tread water number. So going back to this actually determined contribution, what I call the amortization payment, the board in 2020 elected to use this sort of principle of a 20-year close period where we look at what's the unfunded liability as of the beginning of the year, what payment would be necessary to pay that off over the next 10, 20 years.
And by that, you mean the Board of Trustees, not this board.
The Board of Retirement, right, or Board of Trustees, pay that off over the next 20 years as a level percentage of payroll. And when I say a level percentage of payroll, that's important because over the long run, our assumption is that payroll will grow by something like inflation plus a small margin for productivity improvements. So the way that we calculate this payment schedule is that the payment in year 2 is equal to the payment in year 1 plus our assumption about payroll growth, which is 3.25% per year currently. One of the issues that's faced the plan is that payroll has not been growing at 3.25% per year, at least in the last few years. That's one of the big reasons why the contribution rates, the actually determined rate as a percentage of pay, has increased so rapidly. Okay. So if that payment schedule is made for a 20-year period, that unfunded liability that existed at the beginning of 2020 would be fully paid off. Then each year after that, we look at what has changed in unexpected ways or what has caused the unfunded liability to change from last year to this year. And any new changes, it could be a positive or a negative, those get funded over a new 20-year period. So in 2021, we had investment gains that actually led to a reduction in the unfunded liability. That gets paid off over a 20-year period as an offset to the actually determined amount, right? Anytime we have an assumption change, say we were getting more conservative in terms of our expectation about future earnings, that change in the liability that's associated with that would get paid off over a new 20-year period. Each time you get this payment balance, you pay it off over a 20-year period. You can see in the first few years, what I'm showing here, this line is the payment balance for the unfunded liability that emerged this year, mostly due to the shortfall in contributions. In the first few years, you don't make much payment towards principal, but at least you're covering the interest on the unfunded liability. And then over time, you see that balance decline over the next 20 years. And then what happens is we add all of these layers of the unfunded liability together to get that total unfunded liability payment. And almost every public pension plan that I work with in the state of California uses this approach, where you take each year's unfunded liability and you generally pay that off over a fixed period, typically somewhere between 15 and 20 years. Almost every plan I work with uses that approach for funding the unfunded liabilities, including CalPERS. Okay, so what has caused the plan to get into this position? Well, there are a few things that are going on. A big one for your plan has been demographics, right? The retiree population, just as it has with every public pension plan in California, has increased substantially over the last 20 years. In 2002, there were just under 250 members that were either receiving a benefit or were due a deferred benefit in the future. Jump forward 20 years, you now have 437 members as of the beginning of this year that were in that position of receiving a benefit. However, unlike other plans where the active workforces have been fairly stable over the last 20 years, I'm thinking mostly of county workforces, cities, and so forth, this plan has seen a drastic reduction in the active workforce. It has been cut in more than half since over the last 20 years. You had 344 active members earning benefits in 2002. That is down to 167 members. So think about the fact that if you have any unfunded liability and you're spreading that out over payroll and you've cut the workforce in half over that period of time, it means that the percentage of pay that you have to contribute on behalf of the pay for each active member is increasing, mostly just because the number of active workers has declined. We're also showing here a projection of pensionable payroll or the actual pensionable payroll amounts each year. And you can see that as recently as 2021, that number was over $25 million. It dropped to $16 million over a 2-year period due to COVID and the aftermath, right? So again, it's that pensionable payroll base that we're using to spread out this unfunded liability payment over, and that payroll base has declined significantly. That's one of the biggest drivers for why that contribution has increased, not necessarily in dollar terms, but as a percentage of pay. It does, however, contribute to the dollar impact of the unfunded liability. And one of the reasons for that is that the contributions are made as a percentage of pay. This plan has not historically contributed on an actually determined basis. It's a fixed contribution rate that gets negotiated, and they have been increased. But imagine when you have a fixed rate and payroll goes down, the contribution to the plan also goes down. So what we're showing over here is over a 20-year period, what have the dollar amount of the contributions been? Well, over the first 18 years or so, they did mostly increase as payroll grew and as those negotiated increases also grew, the negotiated rates also increased over time. You see that peak out around 2020, but then you see a pretty rapid decline thereafter. There were increases in those contribution rates that went into effect between 2018 and 2020, but then the decline in payroll led to a reduction in the dollar amount of those contributions. So this is what's happened to the dollar amount of contributions over the last 20 years. Here's what's happened to the actuarially determined costs of the plan. And in the first 10 years or so of this projection, we weren't even using a 20-year amortization period. We were using an extended rolling period. It's only since 2020 that we really closed that period and started shrinking it from 20 years. But you can see that even during this entire period of this projection, the contributions to the plan have lagged behind the actually determined cost of the plan, right? To a very large extent, right? So now we're looking at a $5 million shortfall almost in the current fiscal year, notwithstanding the additional contribution that has been made. Okay. What we're showing here is the funded ratio over that same period of time. And back in 2002, this plan was over 100% funded. You'll see a few things that jump out here. One, the big decline that happened in 2008, not unexpected, right? That's on the assets. Those are big investment losses that affected basically all public pension plans. You also saw that decline in 2002. That's also a deferred recognition of the 2001 .com bust, right? we're showing here the ratios both on that smooth basis and the market basis. You'll see that the market basis number jumps around a lot more. That's to be expected because those assets aren't smoothed out. But on both bases, you've seen a continual decline since 2014, and that really has been based mostly on that continued shortfall in the contribution versus the actually determined cost. Other things have contributed to that decline in funding. We have had additional investment losses, in particular in the last year. In 2022, the returns were negative. We've also gotten more conservative in terms of our assumptions. So at the beginning of this period, most public pension plans, including this plan, assume something like an 8% return on assets over the long term. We've steadily brought that down to its current level of 6.75%. When you remeasure the liabilities at a lower assumed rate of return, the liability measurement goes up. Remember that very first graph where we took those benefit payments and we split them into two pieces, the value that's expected to be covered by the assets and then the discounted present value. If you shrink the value that's expected to be covered by future investment earnings, the other value, the liabilities, go up. Right? So the liabilities have increased as we've reduced those expected rates of return, also gotten a little more conservative in terms of our mortality assumptions. But those assumption changes haven't had as much of an impact on the liability, on the shortfall, as the underfunding has over the last 20 years.
Yes, Director Master.
What assets is the fund allowed to invest in?
I don't know that we have limits. I believe anything that seems to
Vehicles, are they, I mean,
whatever is fiscally responsible is I think the rule. We're not limited in that way.
Thank you.
I won't make comments on investment policy. That's beyond the area of my expertise. Thankfully. So that's
Director Snyder.
I was just trying, because you had some numbers on, so we're paying out 16 million annually. Is that right? For participants.
Rough, yeah.
And then we're what you were saying to make everything up in 20 years is would be $8 million for annually to backfill that hole.
No, just in terms of the unfunded liability
And
payment.
to maintain current would be about 2.5 million. Is that?
We can go to that. I can
I'm just trying to get the numbers straight, man.
Yeah.
What I heard was 8 million to backfill and 2.5 million to maintain, plus 500,000 for administration fees. Is that?
So what we're looking at here.
It's 11.5 million.
I think that was to Treadwater.
There we go. So the $11.5 million is to fully pay the current cost of the benefits, which is about 2.5. The benefits being earned this year, plus an additional 8.3 to pay down that unfunded liability. Now that 8.3, that's the interest on the unfunded liability, plus the additional payment to pay down that principal over time.
That's the whole. Yeah. And because I didn't hear in that part what, and maybe in percentages, what are we doing annual? What are we putting in?
Most recently, it's around the shortfall was about, I believe the projected without that 5 million was around 7, between 6 and 7.
About 7 million.
No, that's a shortfall.
No, the shortfall was about 4.6 million. So take that away from the 11, and you're at 6 something.
Right. But that's not the Treadwater shortfall. That is the shortfall.
Correct. The Treadwater shortfall
I was
is.
trying to get a hard number. What the difference was?
Yeah, the Treadwater shortfall is about 3.5 million. You're short by about $3.5 million on the Treadwater number for this year.
Let's actually put a plan together to fix it in 20 years. We need about 6 million more a year.
About 5 million. Yeah, for the current year.
Please continue, Mr.
Through the chair, can I get a little clarity on that? Because how they were throwing out numbers. So $11.5 million for this fiscal year would be if we wanted to start over a 20-year period. So 8.3 of that is interest plus
Yes.
the
So
unfunded liability, 2.5 for current benefits, and then there's $500,000 for administrative expenses.
correct. And a portion of that 1.2 million is already covered by the anticipated contributions by the members.
But it's 11.5 million.
11.5
20 years.
total, employee plus employer.
Okay, and if you were to separate out what the employees are already paying, what would that number be?
So it's 11.5 minus 1.2, it gives you 10.2.
That's what I thought. Okay, great.
Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
It's so much math, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, one more question. The roughly 5 million number that you gave for the current year, that is without the employee contribution?
That is include the shortfall between what the employer plus the employee are paying versus the $11.2 million is just under $5 million. Now, again,
Just this year.
I believe this year, actually, there probably is no shortfall if there's an additional payment of $5 million that's going into the plan.
Okay, that was my next question. Thank you.
It was made last fiscal year, so it was made in June, I believe.
Okay. And we do this valuation. The valuation for the pension plan is done on a calendar year basis, right? So that $5.2 million or $5 million will show up in our valuation that we just get started on in a couple months from now.
I tend actually to think myself that the magnitude of the difference is greater than the specific numbers. Mr. Schmidt, please continue.
Okay, so we've talked about what's happened historically. The next step is to move on to our projections of what's happening what we expect to happen going forward. Okay, how are the contributions expected to change over time, and what is expected to happen to the plan's funded status? And forgive me, but all of these numbers constitute what I frequently refer to the retirement board as the actual fantasy, that we actually get every single one of our assumptions right in terms of how much assets are going to earn, when people are going to live, and so forth. We know that that's not going to be the case. We don't know what the future holds, but these are based on our best estimates of future events. So this graph right here is showing what the projected contributions would be if they were held constant at the current levels in the MOU, which is 34.5% of pay by the employer, 7% or 7.25%. Sorry, I referenced 8% before. It's 7 and 7.25% by members based on whether they're a legacy member or within the PEPR tier. And if those contributions increase by 3.25% per year at the rate of payroll growth, right? So currently in that between $6 and $7 million range, increasing over time. If the contributions were made at this level, this is the projected funded status for the plan. Adding in this dark blue line, that funded status where the scale is on the right hand, we're currently just over 40%. It's expected to continue to decline. And in 2040, the plan would run out of assets, right? That shortfall is large enough right now that if things continue as they are, the plan would be expected to run out of assets in 2040, in less than 20 years. Let that sink in. If contributions were increased to the actuarially determined contribution, as shown in the gold bars, right? So immediately jumping up to that $11.2 million level, and then increasing it at 3.25% a year, you can see that those contributions peak out in 2039 at about $20 million. After that period of time, though, contributions would drop significantly, right? Because the bulk of the unfunded liability would be paid off, and most of the cost at that point would be associated with the ongoing benefits being earned by the members, right? Which is getting you down and back into that $6 to $7 million range 20 years from now, even though payroll will have hopefully grown by then, right? If that contribution schedule were to be made, the funded status would look like this, right? It would stay pretty flat for a couple of years because, again, it takes a while before you start paying those unfunded liabilities down when you're having those payments increase over time in dollar terms. Plus, we still have some deferred investment losses that I told you about from 2022. But once that happens, then you start to see significant and rapid improvement in that funded ratio. So out in 2040 or so, you're close to 100% funded. Obviously, there is a huge divergence between these two lines, right? That funded ratio continuing to drop and decline to 0 in 2040 versus get all the way back up to 100% in less than 20 years. There are big differences. And obviously we know there's a big difference in those contribution amounts. So just because you don't contribute the full actually determined contribution doesn't mean the plan's going to run out of money. There's clearly differences between these paths. But if the path continues on its current trajectory and improvements to the increases in those contribution rates aren't made, we do expect to see continued declines in the funded status going forward. You'll notice I haven't talked at all about impacts of benefit changes. We have reviewed what the impact of some of those things would be with the retirement board. But again, go back to my earliest statement, the bulk of the liabilities are associated with people who are no longer working, right? So any changes they make to the plan provisions that only affect active members are not going to have an enormous impact on that accrued liability that already exists. It will have some impact, but it won't have, we're not talking about reductions of 10 or 20% in that liability, right? Okay, that concludes what I had prepared. I'm happy to answer any additional questions.
Are there additional questions? I certainly have some. Director Grosswell.
With reference to the 3.25% increase in payroll, are you assuming payroll is going to go up because of increased wages, or are you referencing you're hoping they're going to get more employees?
It's a great question. Our baseline projections assume a stable active workforce. So that baseline projection, assuming 3.25% payroll growth every year, is mostly inflationary based, right? We're assuming that as MOUs come along, people are going to get raises. They will average something like inflation plus potentially a small margin. But our projection is based on the workforce that was in place as of January 1st. If the size of the workforce increases, that helps in several ways. It helps because those members would be contributing to the plan. The employer would be paying contributions on their behalf. So the dollar amount coming in increases. It also means that unfunded liability payment would go down as a percentage of pay, right? Because you're spreading out that dollar amount, that $8 million payment over a larger payroll base. It doesn't really have any impact, though. Hiring new members doesn't have any impact on the current unfunded liability, because when they enter the system, they haven't accrued any benefits yet, right? So they're starting from scratch. So just to summarize, yes, our projections are based on a stable workforce where they're getting inflationary increases in their pay over time.
Dr. Oswald.
And that one chart referenced if 2039, approximately 16 years from now, we could be up to close to 100%, but certainly over 80%. Was that requiring the 10.2 that Anne Marie referenced every year?
Yes, growing by 3.25% per year. Yeah, it's requiring the gold bars here, right, which starting around, starting at 11%, $11 million between the employer and the employee, and then increasing over time.
Thank you.
Any other directors? Mr. Schmidt, could I ask you to go back to slide 34? That is the chart of the contributions the district has made versus the actuarially defined contribution over the last 20 years. I want to note that the Board of Trustees of the pension trust has absolutely no power, absolutely none, to influence the district's contributions to that, and that the chart is a little bit deceptive in that every year we are not paying the actuarially defined contribution. We are making the situation of the plan difference by a greater magnitude than the difference that you see there. It's a multiplicative effect, not an additive effect. And so for 20 years, we have underfunded the plan. And that is something that the trustees don't influence. That is something that we have counted on the union and the district to work out in negotiations. And we can make suggestions in that regard, but that's all we could do. The Board of Trustees, at the prodding of the district, has made changes in the plan. It will make additional changes, I trust, in the plan. But as Mr. Schmidt has pointed out, those don't even rise to 10% of addressing the unfunded liability. It was in the neighborhood of 2%, and that's under best possible circumstances, as I recall. Has to be done, but it ain't going to fix this plan. It was never going to fix this plan. Maybe early on, before things started to diverge and the problem started to multiply, that could have happened. But certainly in my time on the trust board, and those options play themselves out gradually because they have to be discussed, they have to be negotiated, they have to be incorporated legally into language that we can adopt. They are not instantaneous. As we've adopted one after another of these things, we have not come close to addressing the problems in the plan. So the challenge is, yes, changes have to be made in the plan features, but they ain't going to fix this. And I can see Director Mulligan squirming a little next to me here, but I'll go to Director Rabbit first.
Well, this may end up being answered by our general manager anyway. I appreciate that. I've been on the retirement board in Sonoma for a decade or so, and you mentioned earlier, and I realized that so of the 4 plans that the district has, only one has CalPERS has these required contributions made on an annual basis. But obviously, this plan of those other 3 is in the worst condition by far. By far, is it? And I don't know if this is an accurate question to me. I realize that the demographics have really taken a hit more so on this plan than any other. Is that solely where we lay the difference then, or are there other factors?
Oh, there's lots of factors. How much time do you have? So what I might say is we have a solution. We negotiated in our collective bargaining agreement that we will put together a rehabilitation plan. If we do that, that is a path forward. That's how other plans fix themselves. So we have a path forward. It will take a lot more contributions, but it will take other changes. But a lot of things have contributed to this plan. 20 years ago, they kept giving away money. For you to give a blank check to someone who's giving away money is arguably a gift of public funds. It's not fair to your ratepayers. So the trustees need to do their job and we need to do our job. But this process for rehabilitation plan is how we can get there collectively to right this ship. Absent that, though, it will struggle. So it's vital that we do what we agreed to do in our collective bargaining agreement. I'll talk about just a couple of things, though. This plan has not been well administered as long as I've been at the district. I can be very blunt about that. A prior legal counsel that served on it for many decades had only this pension plan, their sole pension experience. They worked for an intellectual property law firm. The administrator for this plan's qualifications were her father was a bus operator for Golden Gate Transit. We had an investment advisor that quit, who was really, really good. And then when it came time to hire someone else, they had 2 choices. One was the firm that does our OPEB. And if you went yesterday, you heard that we went from 0% funding in 2007 to 70% funding today. They didn't hire that firm. They hired the gang from Vegas. The firm was in Vegas, and at trust board meetings, the financial advisor used the terms, we'll place a bet on this. Whenever someone says, we'll put a bet on this, you want to run for cover. These investment advisors have self-selected benchmarks. Most of the time, they either underperform or overperform going in only one direction, markets going up or going down. This firm underperformed going up and going down. Based on their self-selected benchmarks, they were in the bottom 1% continuously for the life of it, until they finally, after many years, discarded them based on pressure from the district. So it's not just that you had down markets. When people were earning money, this pension was not earning nearly as much as any other pension plan or investment plan that we are associated with. The Inland Boatmen's Union, CalPERS, Marine Engineers Beneficial Association, or our own OPEB. So this pension plan has not been well administered. It needs a lot of help. It'll take a lot of money, and we look forward to doing a rehabilitation plan. There's lots of ways it gave away money for a long, long time. When things started going south, the trustees had the legal authority and arguably the fiduciary responsibility to make changes. They did not make those changes. So it gives away money. So when someone gives away money, that needs to stop. We look forward to doing the rehabilitation plan. We look forward to fixing this pension plan. We feel we have a moral obligation to do it, and we feel that all of our employees deserve a good pension, and the key difference for this plan from our other three pension plans is how it was originally structured, how it's governed, and how it's administered, and the people that have worked on that plan. That is the fundamental differences.
I'm going to bristle a little at the rhetoric there. I am the senior representative of the board among the trustees. My term on that is well to the right of that graph there. We have made changes. They have been gradual. The investment advisor was definitely problematic. However, over the entire life of their time with us, my recollection is that by the end they actually had met the assumption, our assumed rate of return, not without a lot of difficulty prior to that. But and then additionally, they represented to us that they were structuring things, and they were chosen before my timeline. They were structuring things so that would put us in a better position for periods of volatility. We couldn't really tell that was untrue until we actually hit one of those periods of volatility, and they didn't perform well at all. And that's when we made the decision. It's time to can them and get somebody else. The administrator of the plan lacked knowledge. Basically, administered the plan on a payments and account basis just fine, but lacked knowledge of other plans, and so especially in terms of security of the plan and those concerns, we made that change. So there were a variety of reasons that came up over the years, and none of these were instantaneous. None of them could be. They all had to play themselves out. They all had to go through legal counsel. They all had to go through a couple of meetings and discussions and votes. But we have gradually brought the plan around to where it has addressed many of the concerns that General Manager Mulligan has just talked about. Are there any other questions? There are quite a few. I saw. I think Director Maston's hand go up first this time, and I'll get to you, Director Conroy, next.
There have been a lot of numbers thrown around at the end. Just for clarification, what's our current pay? Annually?
You pay 34.5% of payroll to this pension. I have to defer to Joe on the exact dollars.
Yeah, is that the 16 number? I'll have to look it up.
Somewhere around 5.
Yeah, it's funny. We've got 5 million figure that they threw around earlier. Our yearly total, that was roughly double the yearly total. So our yearly total was roughly as the actual design about 5 million.
And then the members, another million.
Right. And then, so you may not be able to answer these off the cuff, but
back to those.
The numbers in the dollar amount that employees contribute currently.
Either PEPRA and non-PEPRA. One group, I think, Joe, 7%, and the others 8.25%. I think it is. So the PEPRA, the newer employees who have a lesser benefit are paying 8.25%. The current classic employees, the long-term employees who have the more generous pension benefit, are only paying 7% payroll, and for negotiations. And PEPRA employees is on autopilot by state law. It sets it, while classic employees are not affected by that, subject to negotiation.
Mr. Schmidt, if you want to jump in at any point and correct anything.
The dollar amount by the members was about $1 million for 2022.
And then this dollar amount
Was 4.9. So.
Director Conley.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions. First is the clarity between the board that oversees the pension fund, what our role is. It sounds like it's a very separated entities,
yes.
First of all. And secondly, if there's a rehabilitation plan, what's our role in that? Is there a restructuring that should happen so this never happens again? If we look at a 20-year program, Dennis, I don't think you're going to be here another 20 years to oversee it, so it might not be as, I mean, it might be a very different general manager who might not have the level of experience here, and it could be a runaway train again. I mean, I'm just very concerned about, we need to fix this, obviously, but we're being left with a big problem, and I think we need a bigger role in the solution from this board of directors, because it sounds like it's very much us versus them, and I want to know when this rehabilitation plan is done, what the input was from this board of directors, and what's the plan going forward, and what role do we have to make sure this doesn't go off the rails again?
I'll fill in a little bit, actually, part of that. Dennis can fill in the rest. The Board of Trustees is structured to have equal votes from the Amalgamated Transit Union and the Board of Directors of the Bridge District, or appointees of the Board of Directors of the Bridge District. It's 3 and 3. Those votes are block votes. So it's not as though one bridge director can go one way and two the other way, and then there'd be a 4-2 vote in the board. It's always 1 versus 1. We vote as a block. So if there's 2 bridge directors that vote for one point of view, that is the vote that the Bridge District trustees take as a whole. So I don't know if that answers part of your question, but Dennis can go on.
So it's set up for inertia. Mike described how it currently is. So it's a 1-1 vote. So if it's a tie, nothing happens. There is an arbitration proceeding that's been used once to greatly increase benefits a little over 20 years ago before that chart. But you raise a great question, because it could be restructured so that there isn't that inertia. You know, there's lots of options out there that could occur if the parties agree to it. And, you know, if the project, if it's going to be fixed, you know, ideally part of the fixing would be the organizational structure, and legally could occur if all the parties embraced it. So you raise a great question, because the rehabilitation plan won't be adopted by this board. It's something that in the collective bargaining agreement process, we got the ATU to agree to do it with us. We'll pay for it. We'll hire the experts. Graham gave us a recommendation for some actuaries to do the work because it needs to be someone else. But we're going to bring in professionals that we'll pay for to help facilitate this. But ultimately, it will be up to the board of the trust to decide whether or not to adopt it. But as part of that, they could choose to restructure themselves in a different way. They could choose to make, to negotiate something where, this board runs it all. But if you run it all, you run the benefits and you run the contributions, you run it all like another pension. They may not want to propose or embrace that, but I do think some organizational structure change is probably long necessary, so we're not back here 20 years from now. I think you're spot on, Director Conroy.
Director Snyder. Sorry, Director Theory, I think we're up next.
Let's let Director Snyder go first, as he's actually on the pension board.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot said, and I'm fairly new, and I've been around some of the pensions a long time, and a couple things. It is really frustrating because the board is completely handcuffed. I mean, you need 5 votes to get anything done, and the deadlock makes everything difficult. I would fully support a restructure of everything. And it's also like, we have as fiscals, our houses are on the line, our entire our private properties on the line. So it's a big responsibility, and it's kind of a scary thing what we're going through. We really need to fix this. To David's point, I think the other two, those are two different laws referring to in here. One is PEPRA, which is kind of the Public Employee Reform Act, and then the other one is the Pension Protection Act. So my union looked through this. We went through this, and we're actually in the green zone right now, but we're under the Pension Protection Act. So we pay into the PGVC and all that stuff. And if we would have failed, or if we were at this funding level right now, Biden's just had a whole program to bail these failing, declining things are. We're not in that. So there's this weird question out here, and I respect Dennis and Kim's legal analysis, and I'm not an attorney. You guys probably know more about this than I do, but we have our own attorney saying this is a public plan, and we have the district saying it's a private plan. Whatever it is, we got to fix it. And I'm really excited about the rehabilitation stuff. But these other pension plans, like CalPERS, it requires YARCs, but the other are Taft-Hartley plans that fall under the Pension Protection Act. So when you do hit these funding levels, there's automatic things in the law that have to come in. And we had to do our rehab plan, and we did a kind of a similar thing where we backfilled all the unfunded liabilities with no new pension stuff attached to that. So it's a really strange twilight zone that this plan falls in. And I think when we go forward on this rehabilitation plan, I think we should restructure the bylaws of this whole thing, because it's insane that it's block votes. So if somebody does have a conscience and tries to vote one way or another, you can't. So I think the bylaws are structured for this thing to fail, and I do think that we should look at the whole thing when we do this, when we sit down and review this. So that's my.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Well, Director Thur, I think, was next. And then I
She
think
can go ahead.
Director
A follow-up question. How many plans are structured this way with block votes? Is this an unusual arrangement? Is this a typical arrangement?
You know, I'm talking to one of Kim's colleagues, Liz. It's a very, very, very unusual plan. But it's set up for nothing to happen, basically, set up for inertia, and so it's problematic. But yeah, it's not a common plan at all. It falls between lots of cracks. You know, they did implement PEPR changes for new hires. They did not implement changes, though, for existing employees, like other pension plans did, vis-a-vis spiking and other things. So it's kind of in this gray area. But the issue is it's an area where nothing gets done, and it continues to be in worse and worse shape every year. So the rehabilitation plan is a story. But I really take the suggestion that we look at perhaps suggesting to the parties some restructuring for the governance of it, because that would help long-term tremendously.
And how do their governance changes happen?
There's a trust legal document that's initially crafted, kind of like what we did for our OPEB. And so, you know, the parties could agree to make changes in those, but the parties would all have to agree on the same page. But if it's for the best of the pension, and if it's tied to a solution to the pension, I would hope that all parties would embrace it.
effectively, I think as Dennis has implied earlier, the changes would have to be negotiated out between the district and the union, and then before the board.
How do we express as a board if there is a consensus here of this rehabilitation plan being coupled with structural changes? How do we express that by motion at the next meeting?
I think we're hearing that there's an interest in fixing this plan, unanimously. There's we've agreed to a rehabilitation plan, and we hear there's an interest in us exploring with the union trustees the possibility of a permanent fix that also involves governance changes. Because you can't guarantee a blank check to someone because of your ratepayers' duty. You have a duty to the people that pay tolls. But if they, things are changed long term, there may be possibilities to provide adequate thing long term with structural just so that benefits aren't given away, such that it creates a duty for your toll payers to pay for people to have gifts of public funds.
I'm going to take Director Rodoni and then
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for being the messenger. Not a great message you brought. You did it the best way you could. And thank you to the president for explaining some of the other history. But, I think we all agree we have a moral obligation here. But as a new board member, and Director Snyder sort of mentioned this, I'd love to understand what our legal responsibilities are and our risks too. And so maybe a different conversation that we need to have with our attorney, because I think that's unclear to me. And it's certainly unclear to maybe some of the other board members.
I will say that the plan council and district council differ on what our legal responsibilities
I
are.
get that, but I think understanding that and maybe the history would be helpful for some of the new board members.
We could do a presentation at a future board meeting on the history of the governance of the plan, on how it's structured, what our legal opinion is. And then, at some future date, we may have a closed session item where if the rehabilitation plan isn't successful, to force some changes.
Sorry, go ahead, Director.
Thank you.
And Director Thur, I'm not forgetting you. I'm getting through those who haven't.
Yeah, of course.
I guess I would ask if we could have maybe put it, since this is pretty critical, to have it put on the agenda to get an update either from the general manager or from a committee from here on, because if there's going to have to be funding next year probably. And that gives a deadline, and we would have to know that by May or June for the new budget. So I guess I would request some kind of periodic status report. I was going to say every other month, probably would have to be monthly to say you folks are finally meeting.
I would suggest actually that it be tied to the meetings of the rehabilitation committee, that we hear about their discussions and what's going on, because that very directly addresses and Director Thayer.
Yes, so I have quite a few comments, but I had a question first. How would the rehabilitation plan work? Would the district be contributing more to the pension? But is this going to be the district saying we'll contribute more if you get rid of these things in your retirement plan?
So the rehabilitation plan, as agreed to with the ATU and the district, is within the construct of the Pension Protection Act. And so it would be treated like any other pension plan that's in trouble that needs to be saved. And so we would follow that same roadmap. We would not reinvent the wheel. We would hire experts to advise committee, which would be district trustee and a union trustee and staff to put together a plan. And typically what these plans do is they look at changes in benefits and much, much more contributions. And it's a combination of things that solves it. No one thing will solve it. But certainly, giving away money can't continue. So
I want to piggyback on, I think it was Director Grossball said about having this whole thing come back to the Board of Directors. I'm the type of person where when I hear of something like this, I immediately want to take action and fix it and figure out how to fix it and what are the numbers. And I think it's critical that this board stay involved. I do also, I was very moved by our actuaries, the plan's actuary Smith's analysis that was it 157 people paying into the pension right now versus the 344 we had in 2022. Is that correct? That even asking for concessions is not going to fix it. So, I would really like to see something kind of big happen with the district. I don't think, the bus operators are employees. And, whatever, I know that there's different sides to who did what and what happened with the plan for the last 20 years. But my son has kind of a funny thing. He says, when everything is such a mess, you don't know how to fix it. He calls it a shenanabooly. And maybe it's a made up word. Maybe this is a shenanabooly. And we all have to say, we're just going to move forward. We're going to fix it. We're going to put the money in. And the board and the district stands and the union stand behind the plan. Because with the numbers that I saw today, we're going in this downhill spiral where we're increasing the cost exponentially every year. And, I think we were looking at approximately 20 years of increased contributions before 2039. If I'm correct, please correct me. You're the expert, I'm not. But 2039 is when we would not have to keep making those contributions. And I think that would be a fiscally responsible thing to do. And I'm hopeful that the rehabilitation plan can get there, and also that this board can kind of have a role or ask for a role and keep a role. I think with what I just heard for the first time pension board, that it is a 1-1 vote. I think it's very difficult for that board to accomplish anything, I would guess. It calls for a unanimity in thoughts amongst 3 directors or 3 plan trustees. Oh, 5. It's 3. Okay, you need 5 out of 6. Okay. So I would just ask that. I think that this is a huge issue. I'd like to fix it in my lifetime. And I just am glad that there's a path forward. I just hope the board can be part of it.
Anyone else? That was a lot.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, it was a lot for all of us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I
Not
said
pointing out your
I am a lot, I know. I apologize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schmidt.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We will, however, I think, because there was a request for public comment on this, if you'll excuse me, and I'm hoping it's not lengthy, take public comment briefly on this. Do we have anyone for public comment?
I believe so.
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein would like to speak again?
Mr. Weinstein.
Thank you for taking this again. Just a couple short things. I believe it was at the last pension meeting where Mr. Schmidt said all of the recommended changes that were still left on the board would equate to a 2% one-time change. So we're at 48% funded. We just went to 50% funded. What do we do now? We just cut all the benefits. Where's the money going to come from? It's 50% underfunded. So a 2% one-time change to cut all the benefits I believe it's a little disingenuous. You started this off, Mr. Mulligan, by saying that still giving away money, which I do agree with you. I've negotiated that out. I'm waiting for it to come to the pension trust to us so that I can vote that out. But to compare 20 plus years of underfundment to 6 months subsidies where maybe one person retired, again, I believe is fairly disingenuous to people that don't necessarily know what's going on. For 20 plus years, each side had the ability to lock up arbitration with the block vote. We've had a lot of smart people on this district board right here being part of that trust. They very easily, in 2008, when that housing market crisis fell, in whenever it was, everybody could have locked up arbitration and gone to it. It wasn't a union that was making decisions, or it wasn't just whatever. However you want to package it, know that each side had the ability to lock up arbitration if they didn't like what was going on. Okay. Right now, there are 27 operators left from 2003, 2002, 27. So what we're doing here is we're going to ask our operators, once we give up all of our benefits for 2%, to maybe increase our contributions. And now we're going to ask them to basically choose between food and shelter. I believe it is the district's responsibility to pay this. I believe it wasn't illegal for them to underfund this plan for 20 years, but I believe it's their responsibility to fix it financially. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weinstein. Anyone else from the public to comment?
Mr. Kaufman.
Mr. Kaufman. And to remind me, when you come to because I don't have cards from you, if you come, identify yourself, although I know you're Mr. Kaufman. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Robert Kaufman, again, bus driver since 2010. And as I said earlier, I had and I am. My eyes been on this, I think, before anyone. I think out of all the board members, I go to the pension board meetings. The only person that was there at the time when I first started going to them was a gentleman who was straightforward in front of me. Everybody else has been replaced. So there was various issues I had to take up with what Dennis has gone ahead and said and how this has been framed. I will circle back with you in the future, drawing issues. But one thing, a lot of just sound bites kind of slightly misleading. For instance, he's saying that, there's only one pension in the district that actually has an ARC payment. That pension is actually the vast majority of all the district employees, including Dennis Mulligan's pension. It's like those two other pensions are very, very small, account for a very small amount of people. If you go to our property, everybody on the property, I believe, actually has the ARC, a pension that's basically funded by an ARC. The fuel or the washers, the dispatchers, the supervisors, the mechanics, everybody, etc., including Dennis and staff members and such. Okay, so when you go ahead and throw out only one out of the three have an ARC payment, kind of gives you a false understanding of what's going on. As is to this rehabilitate plan, I don't understand exactly what you're making reference to, being that the contract language reads that you will go ahead and form a committee and you will discuss. So that's left out. And then in terms, circling back to what Shane just said about the 20 years, again, if anybody's had a front row seat in this, has been the district. And just to go ahead and blame it on the pension board, it's just silly. If anybody's one entity has gone ahead and known what's going on here and actually could have stepped in, it is actually the district. So, and in terms of giving money away, when we came to work for Golden Gate, we were promised a pension with certain terms and conditions. It was an understanding. Some of us went into this job, with that in mind. We made life choices, and we expect the district to go ahead and follow with the commitment that they made to us. So to go ahead and diminish those, it's not going to go ahead and do very little in the grand scheme of things. Ultimately, the fact of the matter is there needs to be more money coming from the district. Also, I'd just like to add, basically, just so give to some confusion.
Just winding it up because you're now.
Sure. Again, the Pepper people, everything's in places. As somebody had said, that's locked down. There's no changes. So there's only just actually a very, there's left. I think the majority of the people that are still working aren't Pepper. And you're not going to be able to make any changes. So these changes that you're talking about, trying to impose and austerity measures you want to bring down on our shoulders for basically the problems of the past, it's not that many people, actually. And frankly, those changes shouldn't be made. These were commitments the district made to us. And there's outside of legal, there's ethics. So please go ahead and keep your word, your promise, and please make sure the pension's funded. Thank you very much.
I'll do the speakers. Mr. Holden.
Hi, good afternoon. I have a few comments to make. Graham, thank you for a wonderful presentation. But as you know, these assumptions and expectations and accounting methods that are used, smoothing, to come to the kind of projected outcomes, the proof is in the pudding. So you have to really kind of dig in there and look at the assumptions, look at the methodology, and see what's going on. You also, if I was sitting on this board, I would want legal counsel as to the California rule, the Pension Protection Act, and what is a private plan and what is a public plan, and what legal things that you can do as board directors. And like I would say that, this plan has a first in, first out. And so where I'm coming from is I do not want somebody who is participating in this Lift Up mentorship program and been employed for 1 year and is going to work 25 years and contribute into this plan and get nothing at the end. Okay, so I'm an old guy. I got a pension from the garbage company. I worked at San Francisco for many, many years. I sat on a pension board myself. So I'm not coming from a place of self-serving. I'm coming from a place of all boats rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Anyone else? Do we have anyone on the phone? Ms. Bach.
President Terry, if you don't mind, let me poll the line. Do we have anybody that's joined us that would like to comment this morning at the Board of Directors?
Yeah, and thank the board for their patience.
I'd like to.
May I please have your name?
Yeah, it's Frank Gleason.
Okay.
Jane.
Is there anybody, hang on, please. Frank Gleason, Jane Lindsay, anybody else? Is there anybody else that would like to comment this morning? Please use * to unmute yourself and let me know.
I'm sorry, David Pilpel.
Thank you, David. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Give me 1 moment, please. President Terrio, we do have 3 speakers this morning.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Our first speaker is Frank Gleason. Frank, go ahead.
Hello, board. How are you today? That was a really good presentation by the actuary. One of the things that I would like to point out is that the actuary continually mentioned that the biggest problem with the fund over the course of many, many years was its underfunding. And he also pointed out that with the small amount of drivers that are active, any punitive assessment to these drivers would be of little help in fixing the pension. Secondly, I'd like to point out, and I sent a letter to the board members, if you could read it. The Golden Gate Bridge bus driver pension is not an outlier. It gets a 34% contribution from the district, but likewise, the CalPERS public pension gets a similar contribution per payroll. So that's more like disinformation that I just don't understand that nobody's calling out. The other thing that I'm surprised no one's calling out is this is not a private pension. This is a public pension. This is a Golden Gate Bridge District's pension. It's not overseen by any acts of Congress like ERISA. It's not protected by any other things as though private pensions are, where they pay into a pension guarantee insurance plan. This is only supported, like all public pensions, by fees and taxes and tolls, whichever the agency collects. The district's on the hook. Now, you didn't pay into the right contribution for over, from what I saw, since 2007, when I looked at the way the actuary was making recommendations. What you've created at the district, and you board members are now responsible for it, is a balloon payment. It's as if you bought a house and you paid less on your mortgage for all these years, and a balloon payment just pops up. It happens. And you created it yourself. So I look forward to you guys fixing it the right way. One of the things the actuary might not understand is that the actual seniority list of the active bus drivers is not upwards of 160. It's closer to 120. There's less money going in. So once you get the numbers right, you can go forward and fix it. Once you admit that this is a public pension and quit trying to confuse the public and saying that it's a private pension, it's not. It's a public pension. And you're confusing people. If somebody in the public's listening to this other than myself, they don't know. So anyway, remember, public pension is what this is. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Mr. Lindsay, I believe. Ms. Bach?
Yes, that's correct. Mr. Lindsay, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Board. Thank you, Graham, for giving us that presentation. It was a great presentation. I would just concur with Frank that this is a public plan. If it were not, you would not be applying PEPRA, which is the Public Employees Reform Act. So that would not apply if this was not a public plan. So this is clearly a public plan. They can call it private because it's just between ATU and the district. That's probably where the private comes from. But for all aspects and purposes, this is a public plan. It's got to comply with all the public side of pensions. The second thing I'd like to just note is that in negotiations that Mr. Mulligan referred to and Shane Weinstein, we have negotiated changes to the plan. And I would just make sure that the board members understand that this plan is different than the CalPERS plan at the district in benefits, because the ATU plan does not receive a cost of living adjustment. There is no CPI that's adjusted to it. So there's no benefit of getting an increase. Somebody that's been there for the last 20 years is probably receiving the same check today as they were 20 years ago, unless there is an adjustment in negotiations for those people, which since I've been working with Local 1575, there has been no adjustments to the pensioners. So those pensioners do not get an adjustment, whereas CalPERS has been adjusted every year. So their members get more money on a yearly basis than our members get because of that CPI. We don't get that. So that adjustment is made when you first retire by these little benefit enhancements, if you will. So those were the two items I wanted to point out. Thank you very much. Thanks again, Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. We have one more, I believe, Ms. Bach.
We do. David Pilpel. David, go ahead.
You can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. David Pilpel again. So several comments here. I also appreciated the presentation and learned a lot. I think the district should not bail out poor decisions made by the pension board over many years, whether it was a majority or a deadlock, however that occurred. I definitely think part of the solution here is to negotiate transitioning all district employees to CalPERS over time. That just seems like common sense. That has worked for some employees and employee groups over the last few years, and I think that would make sense here too. This pension board, their meeting notices don't seem publicly accessible to me. They're on some website that requires registration only for members. It's not publicly accessible. I don't know if I need to contact Zenith American, whatever they are, to get their notices, but it just seems like it's problematic. I definitely look forward to the work to develop, approve, and implement a rehabilitation plan for the plan here. I think that makes a lot of sense. The next meeting of this pension board appears to be Thursday afternoon, November 16th. If this board is meeting the next day on Friday the 17th, then maybe a brief update from the general manager as part of his oral report would be in order. And finally, I found slides 58 and 59 to be most helpful, and that told me, in addition to the change in active employees over time, that in 1998, before the housing bust, that the plan was funded at 99% of actuarial need. And it seems to me like a result, in part, a variety of factors understood, but in part as a result of the housing bust, that the asset value went down and that there were not corresponding changes in investments or policies of the board and the pension plan. And that's why it has, gone down substantially to the point of where we are now. Anyway, those are my thoughts at this time, and I'm sure there will be continuing conversation on this topic. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Pilpel. Ms. Bach, do we have anyone else?
We do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Then that is it for this item. We have next item is a closed session, I believe. Director, First Vice President Cochran, I'm going to ask you to take the chair for a moment so I can take care of some personal business.
It's been a long meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I think you're good.
Well, Matt, that's okay.
There's no vote, is there? It's info only, there's no vote.
Yeah, there's no voting. That's number one. But
Oh, we need 10 in the room for it to happen.
At this time, the Board of Directors will go into closed session under Government Code Section 54956.9A for existing litigation for a report on two cases, Kendrick Kelly and Montgomery, as listed on the agenda.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your patience while we remain in closed session, and I appreciate you keeping your phones on mute. Thanks. Thank you for your continued patience while we're in closed session.
Okay, we are back in open session.
Very good. Mr. Milius.
Thank you. The board met in closed session with Conference for Legal Counsel for existing litigation and received a report on the culmination of that.
Thank you, Mr. Manolius. Next item would be new business. We ain't got none. There's communications. There's some in a little packet, blue packet that all of you had in front of you. Others were sent to us in advance. And finally, we have the matter of adjournment. I have a motion. Motions and seconds galore. So does anybody object to adjourning? Nobody objects to adjourning, but let us do adjourn in a moment of silence for Jacqueline Bandettini, Sire David Porcia, Senator Dianne Feinstein, and God help us, the Lewiston, Maine mass shooting victims from my dad's home state. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.